Welcome, everyone. I'm Alex Alenikoff, the Dean at Georgetown Law. We're delighted to see you all here. It's really a very important day, an important event for the law school, the opening of our new Climate Change Center. And we are just absolutely delighted to have with us Governors Sebelius and Governor Gregoire. Thank you so much for being here. I know you have extraordinarily busy schedules, and to spend time with us here is just terrific. Later in the evening, we'll also be joined by EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson and CEQ Chairwoman Nancy Sutley. They'll be here in just a little bit of time. So to have all of them here, all of you here today is just wonderful. This new center at Georgetown means a great deal to the law school, and we hope that it will provide an important new voice in a very important, perhaps the most important policy debate of our day. And we're delighted that we will be working with state and local governments as we try to provide a bridge between the state and local governments and the federal government. We can't really be better located than we are here, we don't think, to provide that kind of bridge. And we intend to do a lot of work in this area. I want to thank our initial funders, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Emily Hall Tremaine Family Foundation, Michael Northrup, Stuart Hudson from those foundations who have helped so much to make this possible. And I also want to thank, she's not with us tonight, but Lisa Heinzerling, a professor at this law school who we have loaned to the EPA for a few years. We hope she's coming back soon, but we hope she does great work. She will be the Senior Climate Counsel at the EPA. She's already on the job now. One of 4 of our faculty members, actually, who have joined the new administration. At this point, I'd like to turn the podium over to our Executive Director, Vicki Arroyo, who, along with Peter Byrne, who's our Faculty Director, will be leading the new center. Welcome to Georgetown. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Welcome, Governors Sebelius and Gregoire, and thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to have you here to celebrate the center's opening with us, and it's great for me to be back at Georgetown Law School, where I was a student many years ago, and to now work with one of the finest environmental law faculties in the country, and also with others across the university, and so many of you in your organizations and beyond the university, to serve as a resource to the states and to provide lessons from the states to inform the federal dialogue on climate policy. Already, we're working with many of you to plan future events and develop analyses on the 4 initial areas of our focus. First, legislation, informing federal cap-and-trade, energy, and other proposals with lessons from the state and regional initiatives. Second, regulation, using the Clean Air Act and other existing laws to increase efficiency and reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. Third, transportation, developing policy approaches that reduce emissions associated with transportation through changes in vehicles, fuels, transit, land use, and systems efficiency. Our faculty director, Professor Peter Burns, brings experience in land use, and I've already started working with Professor Bob Stumberg and his staff and students at the Harrison Institute on this and other topics, including our final area of concentration, adaptation. Both the emerging science and our own life experience tell us that we are feeling the adverse effects of climate change, melting ice and rising sea levels, more intense hurricanes and tornadoes in February, fire seasons that start in January in the south and end in December in the west, drought that affects our crops, communities, and our wildlife. We need to plan for and respond to these changes and anticipate how our policies and laws need to change to accommodate the ever-changing world in which we find ourselves. From its inception, our center is putting adaptation on equal footing with mitigation. And to that end, I am grateful and delighted to announce that we have just been awarded a $500,000 grant from the Rockefeller Foundation to support our work on adaptation. I want to take a moment to recognize Dr. Cristina Rombitis Del Rio, right here from Rockefeller, and thank her for supporting not only Georgetown on adaptation, but so many institutions throughout the world. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Governor Kathleen Sebelius. Governor Kathleen Sebelius of Kansas actually has family members who've attended Georgetown, including her husband, Gary, who is now a federal magistrate judge in Kansas, and her son is actually a student here, and he's also doing a joint degree program with my other alma mater, the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. Governor Sebelius was first elected governor of the state in 2002, pledging independent leadership. During her first term, she was named by Time magazine as one of the nation's top 5 governors and went on to be reelected to a second term in 2006. Previously, she served as the state's insurance commissioner, and as we all now know, she's a recognized leader in promoting access to quality and affordable health care. Governor Sebelius has been committed to growing the Kansas economy and creating jobs while promoting the state's renewable energy assets. She's working with business and community leaders, utilities, and local governments to promote wind energy and biofuels production in Kansas and to expand energy efficiency and conservation efforts. Kansas is also one of the 7 members of the Midwestern Greenhouse Gas Reduction Accord. Many of us in the climate debate, though, know her from her courageous leadership in recognizing the risks of building more conventional coal plants in an era of climate change. In 2007, her administration rejected plans for 2 new coal-burning plants that would have produced 11 million new tons of carbon dioxide annually, the equivalent of adding 2 million cars to Kansas roads in a year. This was a bold decision for Kansas, where almost 75% of the state's electricity comes from coal. In an open letter to residents of her state, she described her support for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment decision to reject the new coal plants, saying, quote, "We now know that carbon has a huge impact on the atmosphere, and global warming is very real. In a state like Kansas, where over 20% of our jobs and economy involves agriculture and the land, changes in climate and atmosphere can be devastating. Less water and hotter temperatures will result in fewer crops and less production, and that affects our state, the country, and the world." Please join me in welcoming Governor Kathleen Sebelius.
Well, thank you very much. First to Director Arroyo and Dean Alanikoff, congratulations. This is a great time to launch a Center for Climate Change and a great location here at Georgetown Law School. As the director has already told you, I'm a little biased toward Georgetown Law School. With a husband and a son, I've written a lot of checks to Georgetown Law School. So I feel the pain that some of you feel on a regular basis. But this is clearly a great center for a climate change discussion. And I'm so pleased to be here with my good friend and colleague, Chris Gregoire, the governor of Washington State. And we felt a little bit isolated in this discussion for years. I've been a governor for 6 years. Chris has just gotten reelected to her second term. But this discussion of climate change and moving in a new energy direction and attempts to have climate planning and greenhouse gas reductions has really been uniquely at the state level. We have not had a partner in Washington. We have not had a discussion or an energy policy at the federal level. And I can't tell you how thrilling it's been for us to be in D.C. over the last several days with the new Obama administration. Chris and I were at a meeting on Saturday afternoon with 4 of the principals of the new team, with Dr. Stephen Hsu, with Carol Browner, Lisa Jackson, who you'll hear from after a while, and Ken Salazar, the new Secretary of the Interior. And just the brief time that we had to spend together, I can tell you it's a brand new world, and we will have great partners in moving in an exciting new direction. So there can't be a better time to launch a center which brings together an opportunity not only for dialogue on the state and federal level and figuring out how to take the action of governors. We've all been joining together in regional collaboratives and trying to move forward since there wasn't a federal energy policy to kind of create a template for that. But to take that activity and help to drive it at the national level. But I'd also suggest that you're in a great city to draw our international partners in. This is a wonderful opportunity to actually broaden this dialogue to a global dialogue and not just make it about what's happening within the borders of our country, but how we are going to deal with these environmental and economic development issues with partners around the world. And I can tell you that our international partners are thrilled, again, that the United States will be back at the table. and wants to re-engage in that dialogue. So this is a great opportunity. I look forward to having an opportunity to tap into the expertise that's here, to use the resources, to draw upon the Georgetown Climate Center for help and support. I wish that our legislators shared what the Director Arroyo has just said about the view. We're going to go back home and fight another bill in the Kansas legislature to strip our Secretary of Health and Environment of all of his regulatory powers because they're not so thrilled with that decision. They passed several bills last year. I was able to sustain some vetoes, so I've got to go back home and continue the battle. But it's great to have these resources. It's great to have the support, and we look forward to being a collaborative partner as we all move forward into a new energy era for America and for the world. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm Michael Northrup with the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. When Rod Bremby, the commissioner in Kansas, and Jay Manning, the commissioner in Washington State, and 20 of their colleagues from around the country got together a year ago, they all bemoaned the fact that there was no place for them to have the conversation that we hope the center is going to be a platform for going forward. And it was really at their behest that a couple of us said, well, this is a good idea. Let's go out and figure this out. So, and little did we know that we'd be here today at Georgetown, but it is really a terrific thing to see this all come together. And the time is now. There is a huge opportunity, and that meeting on Saturday that you all had with the administration was just a terrific indication that finally that partnership between the states and the feds can actually maybe be a reality. I have two tasks today. One is to read a letter from Governor Charlie Crist, who staff was also involved in that meeting a year ago, who couldn't make it tonight, but as you know is another great governor leader on climate change in this country. He writes, "Dear attendees of the Georgetown State Federal Climate Resource Center launch, global climate change is one of the most important issues we face. And it's important that we take action to secure our economic future as well as to protect our environment. As governor of Florida, I've made it a priority to address climate change and protect the Sunshine State's environment and economy. But Florida isn't alone in this effort, and to truly address the issues we face, states must together work with our federal partners. The Georgetown State Federal Climate Resource Center launch will be vital to encouraging that cooperation by providing expertise and resources on climate legislation and by bringing together leaders from around the nation to work toward this important goal. Here in Florida, we're putting in place a new energy future for our state. In 2007, I signed 3 executive orders to increase energy efficiency, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and increase the use of alternative and renewable energy technologies such as solar and wind power. Last summer, I signed into law groundbreaking bipartisan energy and economic development legislation that is implementing measures to stimulate Florida's economy, reduce emissions, and increase energy efficiency. As a result, Florida is second only to California relating to installed capacity of solar. In this way, we are guiding the Sunshine State into a new era of alternative energy and green technologies. I wish you the best of luck with this new center, and I look forward to working with all of those involved in securing a brighter tomorrow for future generations. Terrific. My second and last task is to introduce Governor Gregoire from Washington. And like so many of these governors who've been doing incredible work in their states, while the federal government seem to be doing so little and even be doing less than little, Governor Gregoire is very similar. And she came into office in 2005, as you may remember, and in a very short time has moved forward incredibly aggressively on climate change. She was one of the governors who started the Western Climate Initiative, which, as you know, is a collaborative of 7 states and 4 Canadian provinces, which is kind of the West Coast version of RGGI on the East Coast that we know a lot about. She pushed through adoption of new standards for cars in the state. She backed and signed the nation's most aggressive green buildings legislation, requiring all major buildings to meet the Green Building Council's LEED standards. She put in place a 15% RPS. She put in place a greenhouse gas standard for new electric generation plants, which is going to make it tough for dirty coal in Washington in the future. She's put in place biofuel standards, and on and on and on. It's unbelievable that she did all that since 2005. So, but it is fantastic just to see that commitment again and again at the state level. And Governor Gregoire, you have been right out there with the very best of them, so congratulations. In January, she proposed a piece of cap and trade legislation in the state of Washington, which will put in place the principles that are in the WCI, the Western Climate Initiative Consortium principles. That bill is now working its way through the Washington legislature. I know that she would love your help in trying to do anything we all can to make sure that it moves and passes. And she's also got, I should just say, terrific staff. Mark Rupin, who's here, who played such a huge role in pulling this center together, and Jay Manning, who I mentioned earlier, who was at that meeting a year ago, are just unbelievably good people. And it's been a joy working with them every step of the way. So we welcome you, Governor. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you all. Thank you, and thank you for that kind introduction, and very exciting to the director, to the dean, to have the center here and to have this center actually come to being. We have been through an interesting last 4 years trying to fill the void of leadership here in Washington, D.C. And while we've made a lot of progress in the states, we really came to the realization that we didn't have the expertise that was really going to be called for. Looking at what has happened in the EU, what lessons have been learned, what has succeeded, and what can we replicate here, and in how short a time. So that is, I think, kind of the genesis of the idea. We need the help, and we candidly need the help to make sure when Congress moves, and I am determined it will move, when Congress moves, it moves in the right direction, in the right time frame, with the right fundamentals. And so to have it here at Georgetown, I think, is absolutely the right thing. Now, while I have not paid any checks to Georgetown, I want you to know that our daughter married a Georgetown Law School graduate in August. So. And let me just tell you what Kathleen and I have experienced, a little exclamation point to what she just told you. It has been a 180 from all of my experience over the last 4 years coming back to Washington, D.C. at the National Governors Association meeting and wanting to talk about energy policy and global climate change. This time we come back and it's a welcome mat out. What can we do? How can we partner? How fast can we go? And then to talk about the stimulus package, which, as I think the nation has not recognized, is the single largest energy policy that's ever been passed in the United States. And for those out there who don't know it, it's our job to let them know really what is in that stimulus package that relates to energy, and it's kind of the foundation upon which we can now go and grow. And so the discussion with every one of those secretaries and more was their role, their part in the energy policy. But to hear the Secretary of Interior when we said, what are your top 3 priorities? Priority number 1, energy, and how do we move forward on global climate change related issues. And that's what we got from all of those secretaries. So it's very, very exciting. The Western Climate Initiative began, I think, with a press conference that I had, and the press people asking me the question, what can one little state like the state of Washington with 6.5 million people do with regard to global climate change? I wasn't necessarily ready for the question, but as I thought for a moment, I turned and said, lead. And from that moment, talking to Oregon and California, bipartisan, we have grown to 7 governors and 4 Canadian provinces. And now we're into the launch of, okay, let us each adopt a piece of legislation dealing with global climate change. Now, let me just tell you how the debate's going. The debate is challenging in my Washington State legislature. Challenging in this respect. They really want and are thirsty for information about what has worked and what hasn't worked, and what did the science really tell us. And I will tell you, in the last 4 years, I've made more emergency declarations as governor than ever in the history of the state of Washington. We have, within the span of 13 months, had 2 100-year floods. So we flood in the winter, and then I issue my emergencies in the summer because we have droughts and wildfires. So we as a coastal state are a perfect example that if we don't get going, the consequences are so severe to us, not only economically, but in every respect of our livelihood, that we don't have an alternative but to move forward. But we need the signal from Congress, we've got it from the President, that we are going to move forward, that there is no way to turn back. We have to move forward, and I believe, rather than a tax, that a cap-and-trade system is the right way to go. And I've heard it from the administration over the last 3 days, and we heard it from the President today in our discussion in a private session with the governors. So we need a signal from Congress. It's real. It's going to happen. We need the expertise here and the bridge of what we are doing and what we're thinking on to Congress. One of the great fears is not only are we going to get out there too far and then nothing will happen nationally. That's what I hear from my business community. And then the second thing we hear most often is really, as we move forward, if they do move forward, will they understand what it's like on the ground and how to make it work? We just, at our last session of the governors' meeting, heard from a minister from Denmark. And if you've studied it at all, it's become a independent nation when it comes to energy. They have done amazing things. We can take a lot of lessons from them. But one of the messages when I asked, what would you recommend as we move forward with global climate change? Maybe you should do it as we did it, which in 2005 we put it in place. It was an experiment for 3 years, and it took effect in 2008. Now, I'm not a big advocate of that long a time. We can learn their lessons and take what succeeded there, but there may be a path forward again. So we need the dialogue not only on the science, but on the policy and on the politics of how this center can bridge the work and what we want to do as states on to Congress to make it happen and partner internationally. I sure hope that the United States of America shows up at the next international and says we're no longer going to be in the back. We're going to take our rightful leadership role. I think it's been embarrassing for this country. It's time we took our rightful spot. America's time to lead. It will lead with this center. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you so much. As the Dean mentioned, we'll be hearing later this evening at 6:30 from Administrator Lisa Jackson and also Chair Nancy Sutley of CEQ. But the governors have another event tonight, so please join me one more time in thanking them on their way out.